Hey, welcome to the BG Show, or the Budget Show. It's your boy, BG. So here's a question for you. Is $15 enough for minimum wage? What do you guys think? Or should it be higher?
Yes.
Higher.
Much higher.
Much higher. Or should it be lower?
Crickets.
Oh, the room went silent.
Put crickets.
Anyways, here's what some people had to say on the street. Do you think $15 is an appropriate amount?
No, I think it should be more.
This is just a peanut. It's a low prices.
That's really generous. I'm being sarcastic.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
It's nothing.
Yeah, it's nothing. It's zero.
I don't have a problem with it, honestly. I think it's good. I mean, I'm from America. Minimum wage in America is like $7.50 or something?
Hey.
Yeah.
I think so in Toronto, my understanding is that the living wage is about $22 an hour. I think $20 is probably
$20.
Yeah.
Maybe 20 something.
I'd say 18, I think would be very, very ideal.
17 sounds at least good.
Something like $18, man.
Yeah, at least 18.
Yeah, man. Let the people eat some good food.
So there has been a lot of talk about minimum wage, especially right here in Ontario, because this week, Premier Doug Ford announced that he will be raising it from $14.35 an hour to $15. Take a listen.
That our government will raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour effective January 1st, 2022. This change would mean a full-time minimum wage worker could see a raise of $1,350 a year.
But what does $15 actually buy you? Is it a movie ticket? A burger combo? Because you can't upsize the fries. I mean, we're talking a whole hour of your life here, people. Now, here, before we go any further, I need you to do a few things, like subscribing to this channel, tapping that notification bell, and make sure to follow us on all of our social media. With the help, the details are in the description below. Okay, just to put things into perspective here, the average Canadian family spends, get this, around just over $10,000 on food every single year. And at $15 an hour, let's do some math here. Listen to this. That would cost you about 687 hours of your life, or more than a month of working non-stop just to afford that.
What?
Does that sound crazy to you?
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Well, it sounds crazy to a lot of people. Take a listen.
I know people that they were making minimum wage that can really they'd worry about paying their rent, about getting food on the table, and they couldn't really have fun. It was all about just surviving.
Do you think it's hard for people living on minimum wage though?
Of course, especially remembering my time as a student.
Yeah.
Growing up as an international student, it definitely wasn't easy. So that's why I think, especially for what we give to the economy, and just looking back at all the contributions that are being made around, right? These smaller jobs or like working at a Tim's or Starbucks, things like that, that would typically run minimum wage. They're so important to us as everyday people, right? People go, they start, that's where they do it, especially on their commute to get like their first day's worth, or they're meaningful, it's just what I mean. And so therefore I think the dollar value should represent how meaningful that position is.
Because they work so hard.
Yeah.
Like if you don't make $1,000 a week, how are you really supposed to live? What are you gonna do? Share a room? And look, that's not life. That's not freedom.
People are working hard labor jobs for this $15.
Yes.
It's not a joke.
Right.
You work 8 hours for $15. That's not fair.
It's disrespectful, you feel.
Yeah, it is.
And you know what? Even Ontario NDP leader Andrea Horwath weighed in on this debate. No surprise. My girl's always in the debate. She always has something to say, and that's a good thing. She is the opposition leader. But she tweeted out that Doug Ford would actually have to raise the minimum wage to $17 an hour just to compensate for the fact that he put a stop to former Premier Kathleen Wynne's plan to raise minimum wage to $15 3 years ago. Anybody remember that? Shall we re-jog your memory? Shall I pull up the receipts? Let me pull up the receipts here, because it's important to know that back in 2014, the Ontario Liberal Party tied inflation to minimum wage. This means that minimum wage was to increase every year with inflation. And part of that plan also was going to see the minimum wage increase to $15 an hour back in 2018, which means the minimum wage today, when you factor in inflation, would have been $15.75. Let me repeat that. $15.75. But again, Doug Ford canceled that. So I did what I ought to do, And I asked his government minister about that decision. Burns, roll the tape. We hit the streets, we talk to folks, and they say they cannot survive on 15 bucks. It's just not enough. And a lot of people are thinking back to 3 years ago when the Ford government, your government, was first elected and canceled the planned increase to 15 bucks. In fact, when you look at the rate of inflation, if you guys didn't do that, minimum wage would be $15.75 right now. So why not put it at that rate, at $15.75, where it would have been?
Well, certainly the pandemic has changed everything. I've been clear, the Premier's been clear, we're not going back to where we were before the pandemic. We're moving forward with this minimum wage increase. It's going to benefit, as I said, 750,000 workers. The other major change is we're eliminating the liquor server, restaurant server minimum wage, which was $12.50. That's going to $15 an hour on January 1st as well. That means $5,100 in pay increases for those workers. Of course, many of them didn't get tips during the pandemic. So again, we've introduced legislation, Working for Workers Act, to bring in a number of reforms to boost the standard of living for all workers in Ontario.
Could you live off of 15 bucks an hour?
Look, we want to lift every worker up in the province. Everything we're doing is about bigger paychecks, protecting workers, to bring in stronger health and safety measures, and creating opportunities.
Again, the question was, could you live off of 15 bucks an hour?
Look, I want every worker in Ontario to be lifted up. That's my mission, to spread opportunity more widely and fairly. This is a big step that we're taking, but these workers deserve our thanks. They deserve a pay boost, and we're not done yet. This is a start.
Okay. So clearly, he didn't answer the question.
You ain't got the answers. You ain't got the answers.
Did y'all hear an answer?
I didn't hear an answer.
Did you guys hear an answer?
Not hear an answer.
I mean, we heard an answer, but it wasn't an answer to the question.
No, it was an answer to everything else.
And let's be honest right now, the consensus that I feel that is out there is that this is basically a slap in the face for minimum wage workers. When you factor in that history that we just talked about. I mean, with people in the city easily paying around $2,000 a month just for rent, a lot of people believe it should actually be a lot more than $15. Now, enter in the Ontario Living Wage Network into the chat. Because according to them, Devin, we talked to them, right? Mm-hmm. And they say that the living wage in Ontario, in Toronto, for example, is about $22 an hour. But of course, right now, no party is promising to bring things to that level. Because we asked them. We did. And instead, guess what everybody's choosing to do? They're choosing to trash Doug Ford instead. In fact, take a look at this. Let's start with the NDP, because they agree that the cost of living has gone up significantly. You can see it right there in their statement. And they even go as far to say that minimum wage workers deserve at least $17 to cover the cost of living. But catch this, T. The party isn't actually committing to making the minimum wage that amount. No. They just say it should be this amount, but they're too afraid of the political backlash. Okay, so we got the NDP's take. So of course, we had to see what the Liberals were saying about this whole situation. And no, we couldn't get a direct answer of what they believe the minimum wage should be. So at this point, it's just a lot of talking and just a lot of this.
But that's always how it is, right? Everybody wants to be the leader, but nobody wants to take responsibility for anything.
But if they're not gonna do it, who is? That's literally their job.
And then if you're a minimum wage worker, what do?
You just watch people pass the buck around. Pass the buck and pass the buck, and he said this and she said this, and
well,
we
they
want to
pass
do
you
this.
15 bucks and then they leave you for dead.
But that's the thing, I get it, they want to go gradually. But the market is not going gradually. The cost of living is not going up gradually.
No.
And it's important to remember that, like, we're talking $22 is the living wage. That's not the wage to go on vacation, to enjoy yourself, to be living extravagantly, to have a car. This is the living wage. So you can get a house, like somewhere to live, pay for your food, and survive. We're talking survival. We're not talking living, we're talking
Bare
surviving.
minimum.
Run the Destiny's Child track.
And I'm over it.
So interesting to point out right now is the timing of all of this. Anybody take that in? Because it's very important to remember that there is an election coming up next year. Anybody remember that? And this is when we always see the politicians making promises to get people's votes. It's basically the politicians politicking. And a lot of people can see right through it. Okay.
Yeah.
Would somebody promising to do, like, to change minimum wage, would that affect how you voted?
Well, like politics, like promising is more like a recommendation. It's something that they can do. It's no one's really promising anything. It's just, you know, they want to have your say, and then when they're in, you know, you can't hold anyone really accountable.
What would you say to Doug Ford if you could talk to him? Because he's saying $15, you know, is a big step up.
No, you just talking, man. That's just a talk.
If a politician, you know, or if a different party said that they would increase it to an appropriate level, would that change? Would you vote for them? Is that like a deciding factor for you?
To be honest, no, but I would vote for them just because it would help so many people.
So, hey, we know what people on the streets are saying, right? We got that. And we know what the government is saying and the other political parties. But what about the people who are actually doling out the money, cutting the check, slicing the cheese, making it rain? Show me the money! So first off, it's no secret, large corporations, they got the money. They will be able to afford paying this. We know that, it's not a secret. But what about the small business owners? Let's think about them. What about the people who are struggling to make it day by day, week by week, month to month, trying to avoid the bankruptcy? Well, check this out. Producer Devin, hey, your dad, he owns his own mobile mechanic business. Hey, Mr. Banfield.
Hi.
And he says that if...
Hi, Dad.
And he says, listen, I mean, he has some strong opinions. He says, if you can't afford to pay your employees minimum wage, then that's on you. So we're talking about minimum wage. I'm sure you've heard about Doug Ford's announcement that he wants to increase it to $15 in January.
Yes.
What are your thoughts about that, especially as an entrepreneur?
I don't think it's enough because that isn't a living wage in Toronto.
But like as a small business owner, is it feasible to see these type of increases?
Absolutely. If you can't afford to pay your staff, you shouldn't be in business.
When we talk about minimum wage though, like what is that number? What is that ideal number? Do you think the province should set that at?
Approximately $24, I would think.
$24?
Yes.
And you think small businesses can afford that?
Again, they shouldn't be in business if they can't afford that.
And why do you say $24?
Because the cost of living in Toronto is approximately $2,000 for a one-bedroom apartment. The price of food is going up, the price of gas, everything's expensive. And at $15, you can't make ends meet.
No, I get it, okay? Some people think $15 is reasonable. It's a reasonable minimum wage, according to some people. But we've also been hearing a lot of people say that they worry this isn't just about the pay rate going up, but that it also affects the cost of living. For example, let's break it down, right? Would raising the minimum wage an extra 65 cents mean the cost of groceries and rent will also go up too?
I wouldn't put it past them.
65 cents.
Well, I'm just saying, anybody will take a reason to increase costs on something.
Well, I think it'll go up with inflation like it's meant to, which brings us back to why it was tied to inflation in the first place, right? Like that's supposed to be the consensus. If you're having a $15 minimum wage, it should raise every time the cost of living goes up.
But what about this? What about people who are already making a little bit more than minimum wage? Will they expect an increase in their salary as well? It's a lot to think about. There's a lot to think about. But here's one thing I do know, and that is no one who lives on minimum wage here in Toronto, $15, can survive. It's just not possible. And if you do disagree, if you do, then I dare you to try doing it yourself, because I believe you haven't. Anyways, I don't want to get myself in too much trouble. We're trying to keep the show continuing. But here's how we can move forward. Let us know what you think. Tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. And on that note, if there is any stories that you want us to look into, don't be afraid to email us, news@brandongonezshow.com. And lastly, we do need you to do one more thing, if you don't mind, really quickly. Subscribing to this channel, tapping that notification bell, and make sure to follow us on all of our social media. That's a wrap, right?
That's a wrap.
Yes, it is.
Bye.
All right, take care, guys. BG out. Hey, BG Squad, thanks so much for checking out our channel. And listen to this, we have more great content for you, like this video right here and this video right here. By the way, don't forget to subscribe to this channel right now and tap that notification bell.